So now we will continue our talk regarding the bones of upper limb. So this is the diagram which shows all the bones. First of all, we have the clavicle, then we have the scapula, humerus, radius and ulna, carpal bones, metatarsals, and phalanges. Important thing is that the carpal bones are 8 in number, metacarpals are 5 in number, and phalanges are 14 in number. This can simply be an MCQ because one can get confused that there are 3 phalanges in all the fingers, so the answer might be 15. So the answer is 14 because in the thumb there are only 2 phalanges present. So now we will talk about each of the bones in a bit detail. First of all, we have the clavicle. So clavicle is a long bone. It has two ends, medial and lateral. At the medial end, it articulates with the sternum, forming the sternoclavicular joint. And on the lateral aspect, it has the acromial attachment that forms the acromioclavicular joint. So the medial 2 by 3rd of the shaft is convex forwards, and the lateral 1 by 3rd is convex backwards. Now, the main function which clavicle plays is that it connects the upper limb to the axial skeleton. Now we have the scapula. Scapula has a lot of small structures, but I will explain them one by one. So first of all, it has two surfaces. One is anterior and one is posterior. In this diagram, we are viewing the scapula from the posterior end. Here it is the anterior end. Now, we have the vertebral border, axillary border, and a superior border. Similarly, we have an inferior angle and a superior angle. The lateral angle can be reminded that there is the glenoid fossa. Now, on the posterior aspect, the spine of the scapula divides the posterior aspect into supraspinatus and infraspinatus fossa. At the end of the spine, we have the acromial end. Now, these are the important structures on the posterior aspect. Coming to the anterior aspect, we have the subscapular fossa and the coracoid process. Now, there are two important joints which are formed by the scapula. Number one, that is the shoulder joint, that is the articulation between the head of the humerus and the glenoid. The second is the articulation between the acromial end of the scapula and the lateral end of the clavicle, forming the acromioclavicular joint. The important thing is that from the subscapular fossa arises the subscapularis muscle, and from the supraspinatus fossa arises the supraspinatus muscle. From the infraspinatus fossa arises the infraspinatus muscle, and from the axillary border lower 2/3 arises the teres minor muscle. So these four muscles are the muscles of rotator cuff, and there is a tip to remember that the muscles which are arising from the posterior aspect, that is the supraspinatus, infraspinatus, as well as teres minor, they are going to insert on the greater tuberosity of the humerus, whereas the subscapularis is going to insert on the lesser tuberosity. So this will not only explain their origin but also what they do. So the muscle which is present anteriorly is going to medially rotate the head of humerus, whereas the muscle which are present on the posterior aspect are going to laterally rotate. So now you know what are the rotator cuff muscles, their origin, insertion, as well as their mechanism. So just remember this with the help of a diagram specifically from the Netter's Atlas. So then we have humerus. Humerus is very important bone because the highlights that you could see in this diagram, each point has its own importance. So starting from the proximal end, we have the head, we have the greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, anatomical and surgical neck. Now the importance is that the head articulates with the scapula to form the shoulder joint. I have explained the insertions of the greater as well as lesser tubercle. Around the surgical neck, we have the posterior circumflex humeral artery and the axillary nerve. In the intertubercular or the bicipital groove, the long head tendon of the bicep runs through that, And then we have the deltoid tuberosity. Now, deltoid tuberosity, which is a midpoint of the shaft of the humerus, we have the insertion of the deltoid muscle. Then, on the posterior aspect of the shaft, we have radial groove. From the radial groove runs the radial nerve and the profunda brachii vessel of the brachial artery. Then coming to the distal end, initially we have the supracondylar ridges. One is medial and one is lateral. Then they expand into the medial and lateral epicondyles. Medial epicondyle is more prominent and ulnar nerve passes behind the medial epicondyle. Radial nerve passes anterior to the lateral epicondyle. Now there are different structures you could identify. There is a capitulum, trochlea, and olecranon fossa. So these three components are responsible for the articulations and make the elbow joint. Now, capitulum articulates with the head of the radius. It is present laterally. Trochlea articulates with the trochlear fossa or the trochlear notch of the ulna, and the olecranon fossa articulates or accommodates the olecranon process of the ulna. Now, olecranon of the ulna is the insertion site of the triceps. So these are the important points which you need to remember in the to tackle the MCQ. You do not need to read through all the bones or their parts, but you should be very much clear. Like you can apply all of your knowledge the way I have done in your revision, and this will be very much helpful. Just see the diagram and revise your knowledge so that whenever you are tackled with an MCQ, you can simply answer it right. So then we have the radius as well as ulna. So talking about the radius, we have the head of radius. Now head of radius has two articulations, above with the capitulum of the humerus and on the side with the radial notch of the ulna where it forms the proximal radioulnar joint. Distally, there is also presence of radioulnar joints. So these radioulnar joints are the pivots on which the pronation and supination movement occurs. Then we have the radial tuberosity. Now, radial tuberosity is the site of insertion of the biceps. In the shaft of radius, we have different borders and different surfaces which are less likely to be tested. But at the distal end, you could appreciate that there is a styloid process. So styloid process is the site of insertion for brachioradialis. And in the distal aspect of the radius, it articulates with the head of the ulna to form the distal radioulnar joint. Similarly, in this diagram, you can identify that there is the coronoid process of the trochlear notch of ulna on the anterior aspect, and there is an olecranon on the posterior aspect. Now, this trochlea or trochlear notch is going to articulate with the trochlea. Similarly, ulna has different borders and shafts, which is, I believe, less likely to be tested in the form of MCQs, but you can read through the surfaces that how many surfaces are there. But distally, we have the styloid process of the ulna. It has no insertion, but it is present in the distal aspect. So head of the ulna articulates with the radial notch at the ulnar notch of the radius to form the distal radioulnar joint. So now coming to the carpals, metatarsals as well as phalanges. So what you need to know is that the carpals have two rows. Number one, number two, they are named lateral to medial. Proximal row has scaphoid, lunate, triquetrum, and pisiform, and the distal row has trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, and hamate. There are a few points which you need to remember that out of these carpal bones, the most likely bone which is fractured is the scaphoid. Scaphoid has a retrograde blood supply. So if in case of a fracture of the middle part of the scaphoid, the proximal part of scaphoid is at a risk of developing avascular necrosis. We have 5 metacarpal bones and 14 phalanges, which I explained in the start, that there is only 2 phalanges present in the thumb, while all the rest fingers have 3 phalanges, the proximal, middle, and distal phalanges. The importance related to phalanges is the insertion of the flexor digitorum superficialis and profundus, which I will discuss in the muscle section tomorrow. So this is again a very simplified diagram. Take a screenshot or listen to the recording again and revise the knowledge which you have from the diagrams. So that is the tip to ace your exam. So this is again a simplified diagram. So once you have read through the course, you come to this diagram and pause the video and try to reproduce all the knowledge the way I have done, so that at the end you do not have to again open the book and revise the stuff. So just start to uh, practice knowledge on the diagrams. That is the way to remember the facts on a long term, because at the end we have a lot of syllabus to cover, and at the end it is very difficult. So try to uh, revise it in a week or so, so that you do not have to do it all over again at the end of the exam. So thank you very much for today. If you have any questions, you can ask in the comment section.